Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. And between the years 1990 and 2000, I did hundreds of interviews with musicians for the Irish Times in a slot that was originally called the Joe Jackson Interview. When Paddy Woodworth, the newspaper's arts editor, launched its now legendary Sound and Vision double-page spread. The name above the title idea was his. And I once said to Paddy, "Why me, Lord?" I was joking, though editors do like to be addressed that way. Paddy explained that he chose me primarily because we both believed that the arts should be central to political debate rather than relegated to the sidelines, and that as such, popular music, as an outgrowth of popular culture, could and should be explored from a socio-political perspective. And we agreed that space should not be given to musicians whose primary aim was to sell, say, a gig or a CD, though that is too often the norm in newspapers and magazines. They had to have a good and maybe even illuminating story to tell. Either way, that slot, which if only because it was a 3/4 page spread in the Irish Times, became much sought after, and it could help sell out a gig, or so Tony Bennett once told me, and that to me was the added bonus, especially as someone who became an interviewer to meet my music heroes. I now had access to virtually any musician I wanted to interview, including longtime heroes such as Bennett, Ray Charles, and Joni Mitchell. And even if all I got was a phone interview, something I usually rejected because it didn't lend itself to in-depth discussion, I was happy to say, "You bet." What follows is one of my Irish Times interviews. Enjoy.
Larry Mullen, yeah.
Why is that coming back at you?
No, not at all. I met Larry recently, actually.
Oh, was he? What did he say? Thank you for the compliment.
Oh no, he was really shy. He didn't seem to want to talk much, you know.
All right, he is. He's
very
the
shy.
quietest one of the entire.
But I like shy boys, so
that made you
I
even
just
more.
love him more. Yeah.
That bloody.
I'll stay home with him any night.
that quote was
We
winged
could be
around
boring.
the world.
We could be boring together. I know, because when I went to see you two, was it last year? I went to see them this year, but the year before.
Right.
Bono knew that I was there, and he, at the beginning of that song, he said, "I still haven't found what I'm looking for, Larry Mullen Jr."
He said that,
Yeah,
did he?
it's really sweet. It's like an acknowledgement.
Very good. Well, it was used everywhere.
Well, I went back stage. I was back at this little party in London, and I went backstage, and Larry was there, and he wasn't going to speak to me, so I made a point of just introducing myself.
Did you kiss him?
No.
Even on the cheek?
No.
Oh.
I don't think I'd have got that close. I mean, there was definitely a big barrier.
Yeah.
He was like a bit terrified.
I think he's like that of a lot of people, irrespective of their
There was something in his eyes.
Oh, okay. What?
I don't know, something gorgeous.
Oh, get out of here. All right. Okay, so the difference this time is I'm now working for a very respectable newspaper called the Irish Times,
Okay.
and it's there will be very slight overlap, but I think this is kind of it'll be 2/3 of a page early next week, and it's a serious arts area, whereas I think we can really kind of shake things up a little with this readership. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go light, and I'm going to go from private life to music to show and to whatever is. Yeah, so there's a kind of logic to this. The first thing I have to pick you up on is I feel that my passion has more to do with the Irish passion than it ever has to do with England, which is in the press release. This is a tongue-in-cheek question, George.
Well, I didn't put that. I don't remember telling him to put that in there, but I think it may be from an interview.
But is it true? No,
Well, I was just talking about when I was a kid. You know, I was talking about when I was a kid. I was very conscious of the Irish connection. You know,
Right.
I always thought of Irish people as being quite passionate and rebellious. So, as a kid, I always told everyone I was Irish.
Right.
And as I got older, everybody reminded me that I was actually born in London. But I've always felt, you know, that certainly some of the passion anyway comes from here.
Well, you see, now what I'm going to say to you is totally tongue-in-cheek, but you can't mean your core passion because you are a pervert, you're a homo, and you're a fag. Okay, now your core passion. Not that passion is Irish, because we don't have that kind of people here.
That's what you think?
No.
And they're all in London.
Yeah. So your core passion is that because your boyfriend is Irish? Michael is Irish.
Michael's Irish, yeah, and I've always I love the Irish accents.
Right.
You know, it's something very innocent and quite sexy about Irish voices.
How about those words I just threw at you? Are they still insulting, offensive, or are they just now labels? Because we now even see analysis of queer movies and it doesn't seem to be a loaded phrase anymore.
Well,
or do you still think it is?
I think that they're just words, you know.
Right.
And I think it really depends on
context.
the energy
Right.
of how you're using those words.
Right. Right.
You know, it's the big argument, isn't it? It's like if a rap group uses the word nigger,
Right.
that's one thing. But if a Nazi uses it, it has a different context.
Right. Right.
I mean, you know,
Sure.
gay people call themselves fags and queers and dykes, whatever.
Yeah. Depends on the context.
You know, it really depends on why you're saying it and what you're really saying.
Right. Well, that's
But
why I had to say tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
Because
I think you know, if somebody was to call me that in the street,
right.
that would be another thing.
Which they must surely have often done.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But not anymore.
But very often, they're very quick to detract it if you go up to them. I mean, it happens a lot, but it doesn't happen that much to me.
Right.
Because it's kind of obvious.
Sure.
To me, like tell me something I don't know.
Tell me what. Yeah.
Lose 10 points and spend a week in jail. You know.
You got the Crying Game. This connection. I mean, did that tell you anything about the sexuality of Irish men? Maybe Jordan. You know, he explores his own sexuality in various ways. Did you?
Has he said that?
Yeah. I interviewed him before the movie, and he said he wanted to go down various areas of sexuality.
I think that.
Don't tell me you fancied Neil.
No. I just think I think sexuality, say, is always open to debate.
Right.
You know, I mean, we become attached to our sexualities in the same way we become attached to our cultures or whatever, to our colour.
Right.
You know, it's just another attachment. You know, I think that homosexual fantasies are legitimate for everybody in the same way that heterosexual fantasies are legitimate for gay people.
Right.
You know, and I think that's why a lot of men fear homosexuals, because it is a legitimate fantasy.
Right.
Whether it's something they would like or not is besides the point.
But that movie was about an Irish man who thought he was attracted to a woman, found she was a man, and found it incredibly hard to deal with.
You see, love is love, and that's what the movie was saying.
Right.
Love is love.
Right.
And that is what I think...
Irrespective of gender.
That was, for me, was the essential message of that film, and that's why I loved that film.
Right.
You know,
right.
because it was saying, you know, you can fall in love with anyone. You know, it isn't necessarily the sexuality of the person you fall in love with. I mean, we are, you know, most of our body is energy.
Right.
Electricity and water, you know.
Right.
So, I think, I don't know really, I think I've realised more and more over the years that as much as I might be attracted to the physical body, there are patterns in all the people that I meet. There are patterns and similarities in each person.
Of personality rather than body.
Personality,
right.
You know, everything.
Right.
Issues within the relationship, you know.
And the body's just viewed as part of this
absolutely,
larger...
you know, but I think, you know, it's very often I recognise that, you know, you may look at somebody and you may be turned on by them physically, but there's this other person waving from behind the eyes.
Oh, you told me that the last time. Yeah, I know. I'll be faithful every way but mentally, other than mentally.
No, I don't mean that. I mean that, you know, it's like, you know, that twinkle in the eye is often, you know, the screwed up part of their personality.
All right.
Everything is not what it seems.
You've become, your penis has become the centre of attention this week again. What is this?
Was it ever before?
Well, yeah, but last time we talked to you, I got the feeling, now I know we went as close to the line as you and I could in the discussion, but you seem to be playing more the bisexual card.
Was I?
Yeah, it seemed to be more like I've had relationships with both. I'm equally attracted. This was 7 years ago.
I haven't had relationships with women. I've had, you know, liaisons with girls, particularly during the drugs period.
Sure.
And I had stuff at school, but you know, my experiences as far as relationships concerned have been with men.
But you said you never penetrated a woman. You
I haven't.
This week.
I haven't.
And if the child is yours, it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's true.
Nice plug for the song.
I haven't penetrated a woman, you know, and I haven't, you know, all the women that I have, I say all, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, and I am, you know, the 2 or 3 that I've had any kind of dealings with, you know, I'm still friendly with, and, you know, as far as I know, there's no lumps.
Right, but someone did suggest that maybe during your drugs period you might have done it and not know. Is that conceivable?
I know
conceivable is not the right word.
No, I know what I did.
Right. Right. So that's out the window. That whole story.
It's not true.
You dealt with it very well. I thought that was very, very,
Well,
humorously.
I thought it was funny. It was so ridiculous. I just thought it was so ridiculous that it was funny, and there wasn't any reason for me to get upset about it.
It's another immaculate conception. Then.
Yeah, and I just felt sorry for the woman. I do feel sorry for her.
Right.
She's been writing to me for years.
All right.
This isn't a new thing. I mean, this has been going on like at least 5 or 6 years.
Right. So what are you going to do? Have the blood test?
I might do.
Right.
I'm not decided yet, because I feel like it's a bit of a. Part of me feels like it's a real invasion of my civil liberties. Why should I fucking give her blood?
Right. Okay.
But then part of me feels like if I do it, it'll be over and done with. But nothing's going to come of it, whatever happens.
Right. What about the last time I talked to you? You gave me a witty answer, which was, "What can a man give you a woman can't?" You said 6 inches, only 6. But what about
That's about average, isn't it?
that's your average, or it's about average?
It's about average, isn't it?
Well, what about what a woman can give you? You did say to me that you may end up being with a woman to have a child that you then desired quite deeply. Is that gone? That longing?
Well, it's something that I thought about, but those modern marriages don't work, do they? Look at David and Angie.
Right.
I don't really have any ego around fathering a child.
All right.
I'd like to adopt kids, but right now I know that I'm much too selfish and much too irresponsible to have a child in my life.
Right.
I know there's a lot of kind of hoo-ha about homosexuals adopting children, but I was brought up by straight people.
Right.
So
Right.
the two things don't really go together.
Right. So it's not a deep human need to produce.
Not really. I mean, I love kids.
Right.
I think I really agree with that saying. Mad people and children speak the truth. I think kids are fabulous,
sure.
I'd love to. I don't know really. It's something that obviously I've thought about, but it's not something I think about a lot.
Right.
I mean, kids are better when you can give them back.
Could you actually, when you can give them back, when they get troublesome?
Well, it's crying. Do you want to take it back?
Could you? I was reading Tennessee Williams' thing about his recent biography on him, and he said when he was drunk, he would want as much to fondle the ass of a woman, kiss her, caress her, and enter her as he would a boy, but found he couldn't. On the couple of times he tried, could you have a child?
To have a child?
Yeah, if you really felt I have to do this, I want to do this, or would that just not be of your nature?
Well, I think that would be a very mercenary act.
Okay.
I mean, I think that in that respect, you're using the woman as an object.
Receptacle.
And I think that's a really horrible concept, and
I
think that it's something that I can do.
Okay.
I think, I'm not saying that sex always has to be about love, but I think it certainly makes a difference.
But could you perform with a woman fully? Or would you just not feel physically the desire to?
Well, I think I probably would find it quite difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Officer. I feel like I'm in court.
Okay, let's go.
I just think,
Sure.
I think on one level I recognise that, I'm denying a part of myself.
Right.
But I also recognise that I've made the choice to be gay. I mean, I do believe that I chose to be gay. I don't think it's a genetic fault. I don't think I'm a broken toy.
Sure.
I don't blame Mother Nature. I think it's a conscious decision.
At 14?
I think it happens before conception.
All right.
I think that a lot of stuff happens before conception.
You also said, which we really upset a lot of men.
I'm confused your readership.
Yeah, no, you confused them before when you said most of the men I've gone to bed with are completely straight, which I thought was a wonderful definition of completely straight. But isn't this?
Yeah, straight up the nearest man.
But no, that element of most males maybe quietly, and most of the readers of the Irish Times having some kind of homosexual experience that maybe they don't talk about. And then they, as you say, they fear the issue because they're afraid what it would reveal about themselves.
I think that...
Do you think that is the pattern that most so-called straight men experiment even once or twice? Or would want to?
I don't know if most of them do.
Right.
But
you did say most of yours were straight, you said.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
Especially you said at the time when you were dressed like a woman or looking like a woman, it didn't become a subject to talk about.
It's something I've talked a lot about in my book,
Oh, okay.
I describe myself as a kind of Homo wagon stop. It was like, all these kind of I would meet these boys and fall in love, and it would be blissful for like a while, and then the guilt would start to set in.
Right. Your guilt or their guilt? Their guilt.
You know, their guilt.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think I wanted a relationship so badly. I wanted it to work so badly that I pushed it away. You know, I wanted to be in love so badly.
Right.
And that's definitely been the stuff of my life, and it's been a pattern in my life that I have this idea of, you know, the blissful, loving relationship, you know, everything working
To perfection.
Yeah. And of course, I think part of the problem has been that I've wanted it so badly that I've
Pushed out the chances of having it.
I've pushed it away, you know, because love has to be given freely.
Right.
You can't demand love.
Did you fall though for straight men? Did I see you say that Michael is the first man you fell for who says, I do not fancy women?
Yeah, Michael's
like
gay.
He categorically states.
Well, Michael's gay, you know, he says he's gay. I mean, I think what it is, I mean, when I look back, like in Culture Club, you know, with, you know, and even still now, you know, when I dress up, I mean, I love to dress up. I love to transform myself.
Right.
And there's, you know, I recognize that it's like, there's these two sides to my personality. There's a part of me that really wants to just be, you know, ordinary and fit in and not be bothered. And there's the other part of me that after like a little while of that would get really frustrated and find it very, you know, hello? Arlene, can I call you back? I'm just being an interview. Where will you be, at home or 26226? Yeah, thanks, bye.
Well, that was George and Georgina, as we discussed them before.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, you see, I've, you know, at the height of my success in Culture Club, I couldn't really recognize, I didn't realize what it was that I found uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, hence all the tantrums and, you know, and not handling being famous on some levels.
Right.
But now I recognize that there are two sides to my personality.
Right.
You know, and going back to the.
Well, you did say, have you also analysed that that's why maybe you went so deeply into drink or drugs? You said to me at the time.
Maybe, but I just want to make this point because what I was going to say is that, you know, there was you know, like, freakier than freaky, and yet the men that I was going out with, John or whoever, were, you know, your very typical stable, you know, jeans and t-shirts type of men.
Right.
And, you know, certainly they're the type of men that I'm really attracted to, you know, really sort of the earth.
So it's just like, so the two men could make the two sides of your own nature. Is that what you say? You know what I mean?
No, I think that those people, those kind of men represent stability.
Right. Stability.
They
didn't really, though. John didn't.
Security. Well, no, of course they don't. But you have an idea in your mind, you know, I suppose it's to do with mum and dad.
Right. Right. They set a pattern that you somehow. Right.
I think. I mean, you know, I think all of us measure our relationships on our parents, even if it's unconscious.
And did you said to me that time that it would take a lot more analysis to try and find out why you went so deeply into drugs. Was it part of that struggle between the two sides of your nature?
I think that there's a lot of stuff in all of our lives that we want to run away from, whether you're drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes. You know, I think of those things as being occupational: the telephone, the TV, work, career, sex, love, food, drink, cigarettes. They're occupational and they keep you away from your feelings. I mean, I think essentially all these things are about escape.
And that's what you're doing.
And there's a lot of stuff out there to escape from.
Were you running for your feelings, your central core feelings?
I think that
like numb yourself.
Yeah, I think that all these things do serve as, you know, like an anaesthetic. You know, they help you to.
Have you overcome all that? Have there been any moments of weakness, wanting to go back?
I haven't. I'm probably more anti-drugs now than I've ever been in my entire life. Right. Anti in the sense that I don't want them in my life. Not anti in the sense that I go around preaching to people or telling other people what to do. Right. But you know, I'm more aware of. Like, for instance, like last week when River Phoenix died, it really broke my heart. I mean, it really hit me like a bombshell. And it was like, I think I realise now that how lucky I am.
But you lost other friends. You lost friends along the way from drug addiction. Yeah. Whatever happened to the Michael Radetsky case, which we couldn't talk about? You were being sued for murder.
Well, yeah, that was dropped.
Was it all dropped?
It was dropped. I mean, you know, there wasn't a case.
Right.
And it was really pretty much an American lawyer
took that angle on it.
Well, you know, in America, the way they work is, well, here's someone who's famous, he's got money. Right. We might, you know.
But that was savage stuff. You were being accused of injecting him,
but it was all crap.
Right.
all
So it was all
crap.
thrown out.
Yeah, it was all thrown out. I mean, it's, and it's like, what I'm very conscious of is that I don't want to hurt Michael's parents. Right, as much as they may hate me,
Sure, yeah.
as much as they hate me,
Yeah.
there's
All right.
there's nothing I can say, good or bad, that isn't going to affect them in some way. And so I'm very conscious of not talking about it. And in
Right.
America, I said the same thing. I said, I really do not want to add to their grief.
All right.
You know, as much I don't take responsibility for Michael's death, but I feel responsible to them, and I don't wish to hurt them. You know,
Sure.
you know what I do say about it is that I was denied my grief.
Yeah, you said that to me before.
You know, and that was really sad.
Sure.
Um,
Well, tell me, your music, you talked about Culture Club. The music, when I listen to the Hits album, your music is essentially celebratory. You know, there were these tensions in your life, but the music, like It's a Miracle, all that stuff is very up and...
well, you see, the thing is, there's two sides to it. The music is up, but the lyrics are very melancholy.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's
So,
like,
right, fair enough, yeah.
It's
yeah.
I mean, It's a Miracle was originally called It's America.
All right.
And I wrote that, the first time I went to New York. And I don't know why we ever changed it. But I guess the two things that kind of, it's a miracles in America, it's
Right.
it's the miracle.
Right. What about, we did talk, rock is kind of seen as a liberating force sexually, but there are many people arguing that it actually reinforces stereotypes, that so-called womanly men are
I
people
think it
who
depends who does it.
But then someone like Cliff Richard has been marginalised for forever because he was suspected of being gay. And the so-called pop is for wimps, whereas real rock is for men. I mean, that's all reinforcing. And you, have been described by many as someone who is a sexual threat because you threw all those rules up in the air. Did you ever feel that?
I wanted to be a sexual threat, but somehow or other, I got spaded along the way. I don't know
But
what
isn't that, but isn't that an element? I mean, rock is. I was over at the Grammys and I met little Richard, who was really angry at the fact that he wasn't allowed to speak.
Come in.
He wasn't allowed to speak receiving his award because he saw it as homophobic.
He loves to speak.
He loves to speak. Yeah.
Sorry, was it tea or coffee you said?
Not for me.
I'll have coffee. It's good.
Brought up both actually.
All right.
Do you want to have tea?
I'm alright. I've got chamomile tea, so I'm fine.
You're okay.
Yeah, you can just. Yeah, it's just.
But how strong a factor do you think that is in rock? That there are gender definitions
I think rock, like religion, is a boys' club.
Well, yeah.
I think it's probably harder to be a dyke than it is to be a queen.
Right. In rock.
In rock, in pop, in in entertainment. And these definitions, rock, pop, soul, it's like they're used. It's kind of like a territorial mentality. In the same way that people say, people who use computers are not real musicians.
Yeah.
It's like there's all these kind of distinctions within the industry about what is real music and what is crap.
Oh, what is a real man and what is a real woman?
Exactly.
But you had, since we talked, you.
But those bands, they're appealing to an audience who want their sexual identity reaffirmed in some way.
Sure.
You pretty much in rock and roll, you pretty much choose the band that suits you. It's like it is very territorial. You got all these little white kids who want to be like from the. They somehow recognise, they identify with the black experience of being outcast, of suffering, and so they want to be down with that, so they become blacker than black.
Right. Well, you see, this is where, one of the most subversive things you and I said the last time, and some male rock critics in Dublin got really angry at me over it, for allowing you to say it, you creep, was where remember I brought up Julie Burchell's comment about back catalogues should not be praised when back sides of the meat of the matter. She was talking about Lennon. And I asked you if you thought that male hero worship is often a sublimation of homoerotic desires, and you said it strikes you as very feasible, and you then talked about Sting, Paul Weller and Morrissey, that people, males adoring this, but they will never face that question. And the fact that you and I said it made some leather-jacketed rock critics here in Dublin very uncomfortable.
I mean, I went to see Henry Rollins a couple of weeks ago in New York, and I've always kind of, he's the beautiful specimen,
right.
And I've always kind of like, I've seen pictures of him and thinking, God, he's fantastic. What is he all about?
Right.
And I hated the music when I heard it on record. I went to see him play, and it really made sense.
Right.
And it's not just the music; it's the whole physical experience of watching this guy. All the pent up emotion in this person. Right. And I was thinking, a friend of mine has said to me, people who bodybuild are the most likely to be homosexual,
right.
because they're worshipping the male form. Right. They're actually in love with themselves.
Sure.
So they're actually, they're in, and you see the audience at Henry Rollins, they're all like tattooed and muscly.
Right.
And
So you think the same applies then to all the... I mean, Morrissey has a predominantly male audience, but those males don't face those questions about themselves. What are they loving? Why are they running to him with flowers?
I think that you know, a lot of men are very uncomfortable with the masculine stereotypes anyway.
Okay.
And so when someone like Morrissey comes along, who says it's okay to be a little bit fey,
Right.
you know, then I suppose their hearts rejoice, you know.
Well, as you say, whatever makes them feel more comfortable about...
Well, you don't necessarily. You see, the thing is, you don't necessarily have to be homosexual.
Right,
you know,
right.
I mean, that's just again, it's just categorizing. You know,
Right.
you know, you don't, you know, because you don't want to play football, that doesn't mean you're a queer.
Right. But I did see a Rolling Stone poll from 1988 which said that 75% of their readers found unacceptable homosexuality in workmates at any level. So, I mean, so to me that suggests the really core homophobia in rock and roll.
I think that I don't think it's just in rock and roll. I think it's just in life. You know, I think people. You know, it's like the fear really comes from the fact that these feelings are legitimate, these fantasies or these feelings, whether they're, you know, feelings of joy that are suppressed or feelings of fear.
Right.
You know,
They're
it's about the same thing.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
whenever you're angry at somebody else, you know, it's really important to look at
why,
what they are mirroring in you.
Right. You didn't go along with that. You were telling me last time you had lustful fantasies about Presley. Since we talked, there have been stories that he had a lifelong gay affair. What do you think about that? You did a wonderful version of Are You Lonesome Tonight on that tribute show.
I mean, it's easy to talk about that when someone's dead, isn't it?
Sure.
But I mean, you know, Elvis is the finest example of you know, a beautiful man that appealed to everyone.
But not everybody accepts that he was androgynous, that he had the two-dimensional appeal to men and women, because they didn't talk about male stars that way then. It's only now you're beginning to see essays which say...
But I don't think you have to be androgynous to appeal to other men, you know, to heterosexual men. I mean, Henry Rollins isn't androgynous, but certainly it cannot be questioned that those people in the audience are attracted to his physical... You know, you can't separate anything about Henry Rollins. I mean, to me, he's the finest example at this time.
But how important is that? Like, people like Bowie and Mark Bolan and that helped you define yourself.
Same thing, you know. I mean, in those days, you know, if you look back at the 60s and the 70s, the stars very much played with the boundaries. Is he or isn't he? You know, and that was kind of very nice. You know, if you look back at Mick Jagger and listen to his interviews, you know, him wearing makeup, it was like, it was kind of okay to be maybe.
Right.
Whereas now, I suppose, with AIDS...
But is that the factor? Because you now have those people like Lou Reed or whoever disclaiming their earlier claims to be bi or homo and now saying, I'm a former homosexual.
I think the gay issue has become very political.
Right.
And that has terrified people.
The AIDS element.
Just the
politicisation.
The politicisation has terrified people. Because they're having to take it seriously.
Well, why isn't Stop Clause 28 on the Hits album? And was it dropped from an American release? So I saw that in a book called Purple Closet or whatever it was. To say that Virgin Wants You just had it dropped from the album. And why isn't it on the Hits LP?
It's not on the Hits LP. There's loads of stuff that's not on the Hits LP.
Okay,
you know,
but there wasn't. This isn't one of those political decisions you're talking about.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm more pro-gay than I've ever been.
Right.
I'm more pro-gay now than I was 2 years ago or 10 years ago.
I talked to Sammy Wilson of the DUP and politicisation of this whole issue. You know, he's the Ulster unionist, and he said that he wouldn't back the battle of homosexuals in Northern Ireland to have the laws changed as they have been in the South, because he said we must protect our children. Do you think that's reflective of a conservative view in government?
We mustn't protect them from political terror and bombing and ignorance. You know, it's like, I know we can protect them from. We won't protect them from all other forms of ignorance.
But is that a view that's representative of the British establishment, conservative thinking on the same issue too, despite the element of homosexuality in the House or whatever?
I think it's the view of the establishment in general. You know.
Right. But has it more got to do with, again, the fear of AIDS, the fear of the unknown?
I guess the issue of AIDS doesn't make it any easier.
Right.
But I think the general attitude of the public is like, you know, be gay but shut up about it.
Okay.
You know,
don't
keep it quiet.
Frighten the horses.
Don't frighten the horses, and all the children.
That was 100 years ago.
And that is pretty much how it is, you know, because by accepting it, I think you have to deal with all your own fears about it.
Right.
Because, I think we are all, in our own way, very attached to our sexuality, to being male or female, to being gay or straight, black or white, Jew or Gentile.
That's
We're
how we
all
define
attached
ourselves.
to it. Absolutely. And I think, I don't know really. I mean, you see, part of me, this is the funny thing. Part of me is terrified by this drive, for acceptance within the gay community, because in a way, aren't we saying, well, your values are better than ours? So if we can adopt your values, somehow we're going to be okay.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with me at all.
You're saying accept the differences.
I mean, I think that, you should. And I think this is something that's important all over the world, whether it's racial or sexual or whatever.
Right. Do you think what was your response to the stories about Jackson, which seem to have fed into the fear that, molesting 10-year-old boys, I mean, that this now is fed right into the myth of...
Well, I wonder what the reaction would have been if it had been me.
Right.
I was in New York a couple of days after the story broke, and they were having Jackson Day on MTV.
Right.
I mean, when I had my drugs problems, they took me out of Madame Two Swords.
Oh, I know.
That's right. Nobody wanted to play my records.
Do you think that's...
And I think that, part of me felt very sorry for Michael Jackson, because I don't think there can be anything worse than being accused of being a child molester.
Right.
It's one of the biggest taboos in our society.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing is that we're being forced to acknowledge this problem.
Okay.
Because it's been going on for centuries. It's not a new problem.
Sure.
It's been going on for time. And it's really important to acknowledge it, because by ignoring it, you're denying that it exists.
Right.
And kids are being hurt.
Right. But doesn't it feed into the perception that all gays are potential child molesters?
And Michael Jackson's straight, isn't he?
I don't think so. I mean, this is off the record, but I don't think so.
Well, apparently he is. So,
is he?
Well, yeah.
Right, okay.
Listen, more straight people molest and rape
That's true. That's
than
absolutely
gays.
true. That's
I
true.
mean, historically,
Right,
the statistics are very balanced in our favour,
Sure.
And I hope it stays like that.
Right. Okay, just the last couple of questions. I know I'm kind of... No, it's a pretty serious thought again. I'm glad we're talking about issues that are so central. The kind of the church attitude, particularly here in Ireland, has troubled a lot of homosexuals, lesbians.
Well, yeah.
Do you think it has the kind of poisoned mind against homosexuality? Like we had the recent
What
encyclical...
I would say is that, once upon a time, women had to wear headscarves in church, and they weren't allowed to speak in church. And the church has recognised, after a very long time,
Right.
Maybe too late for some people, that these kind of attitudes and these kind of ridiculous rituals are no longer appropriate in our society.
Right.
In the same way that, it is no longer appropriate to stop women from being priests.
Right.
I think if the church wants to rebuild itself, then it's going to have to start accommodating homosexuals, because there are a lot of homosexuals who want to be involved with the church.
There are also a lot in the church.
There are also a lot in the church
Who have their own extra traumas because of that.
Absolutely. And so I think that it's going to have to, if it really, I mean, the church is in a mess.
Sure.
And there's no way the church can deny that. And if it really wants to rebuild itself, then it has to start practicing some of the compassion that it's been preaching for centuries.
Are you aware, though, of the recent encyclical which said which has almost legitimized discrimination against gays in jobs like as teachers? Did you see that? I mean,
No.
this declaration from the Pope which says, yes, there are times where it's fair to discriminate. That's no move forward. That's a move backward.
But you look at the Pope. I mean, the Pope is an old man,
Right.
And he's, you could have a similar conversation with your grandmother.
Right. So you anticipate those kind of prejudices.
Absolutely. The guy's
Right.
an old man.
Right.
It's like...
But are they the kind of things you think the church should throw out before it's to move forward? Those kind of ridiculous...
I think that it's going to have to change its attitude if it ever wants to be the force that it once was.
What about, I'm talking about Catholicism here, and I'm not moving in, but the basic argument too about Catholicism, and I heard it with Emma Donoghue, who was on the Late Late Show last night, a lesbian playwright. Someone phoned in and said, what you're doing is against the laws of God and against the laws as stated by Genesis, which says it is this. How do you reconcile yourself with that, and what do you say to that, the Bible's position against it?
Well, I've read so many arguments for and against. I've read arguments
From a theological base?
Yeah, from priests. You know,
Right.
I think the Bible is very much open to interpretation.
Do you? Right.
Yes, I do.
Right.
And
right.
it is. It's constantly being interpreted in one way or another.
But are most of the conservatives in the church will come down, and these people, the general perception is that the Bible says it's unnatural, against the laws of God and man.
Well, I think that you have to look at the history and the time when that was written.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
I read something that said, you know, this applied to Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, it was
Right.
it was really related to what was happening
Right.
at
Then.
that period.
Right. Well, that's the period where it was legitimized to beat your wife, to strap your wife. A husband had the right, according to the church, to
Exactly.
beat
You know,
his wife.
that's what I mean by it's open
Right,
to interpretation.
right,
I mean,
right.
you know, it's
What about Krishna? I don't know enough. I mean, I know.
well, Krishna in Krishna consciousness, you know, sex is meant to be for procreation.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
and there isn't necessarily a discrimination against homosexuals. There is a discrimination against illicit sex.
Okay.
So it's not that they're singling out homosexuals,
Right.
but there is a lot of homophobia within the movement.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you know, you make those. You know, it's about personal choice.
Right.
You know, a lot of my devotee friends, you know, they know I'm gay, and Michael's been to Krishna festivals, you know, and they've always treated me with utter respect.
Okay.
And likewise, you know, it's really only an issue if you make it an issue. You being
Sure.
anybody else out there in the
sure.
world, you know.
But you and I talked about how you told me last time you have a bedroom in which there are many religious icons. And for many readers, if I say this to an Irish Times readership, that you and Michael perform what they would regard as unnatural acts in the presence of those icons, is to them the height of religious blasphemy.
Well,
You can see why they would see it that way, can't you?
well, I'm sure there are some people that would see it like that, but
Is it a moral? Was it ever a moral question that you yourself had to sit down, or you and Michael had to sit down and
no,
face?
I think that you know, Jesus was you know, preaching compassion.
All right.
You know, maybe Jesus didn't know any homosexuals.
Maybe he did.
Maybe he didn't.
Right. Well, you're. I mean, because Jesus loves you.
If you look at the attitudes towards homosexuals now in this modern time, you can imagine what it was like then.
Right.
So I shouldn't imagine. You know, there were many around.
Are you at peace then in your own perception of your own religious base,
Well, you know,
or is it continually questioned?
I think it's totally continually questioned. You know, the Buddha said on his deathbed, "Don't ever accept anything, you know,
Okay,
blindly.
okay.
Question." And I think it's very important to be in a constant state of questioning. You know,
Right.
you know, I love Krishna, I love Jesus.
Right.
You know, I think the message of Jesus' message is totally sound.
Right.
The essential message is to live in harmony with your fellow man and to live in harmony with nature. You know, and Jesus administered to prostitutes and down and outs and outcasts.
Right.
You know.
Can I have another 4 minutes?
Yeah.
4 or 5
4 more minutes.
Right.
And so I don't, you know, that is really what Jesus Loves You is about, yeah.
But isn't that a kind of central thing for many Irish people who are afraid to come out, who will be reading this article and say they can't reconcile that with their own Christian base, because the Catholicism here has such a strong.
Well, they're not taking responsibility for their lives, are they? You know, and whenever anybody says, I can't come out of the closet because of my religious faith or because of my parents, what they're really saying is, I'm ashamed of what I am.
You really think that?
Absolutely.
But isn't it also fear? Isn't it also like jobs can be jeopardized, your public perception? Like you and I know there are people in the music industry on television.
I believe, right, that the energy you put into fear
Okay.
can equally be used in a positive way.
But some are going to come back and say, I will lose my job as a male sex symbol in rock and roll, as a TV broadcaster, as a movie star, if it's known.
But think about what they're sacrificing anyway.
Which is what to you?
Well, I mean, you know, it's very dark in the closet.
Right.
You know, it's very lonely.
Right.
You know, and you know, imagine if I had to go around introducing Michael as my personal assistant. You know, fuck that shit, man.
Right. It's
Yeah, I have definitely in the last 5 or 6 years, I have definitely sold less records.
Yeah.
Since I became pro-gay, there's no question I've definitely sold less records, but what I've benefited from that is too great
As a human being.
as a human being, on every level. What I
But
benefit from that is untold.
But isn't it true that America's really scared of you now? Just doesn't know how to deal with that,
I
or
don't
is
know
it?
really. I don't know really because
Like the
you
southern
know,
states of America, with you being, maybe
I
I'm
don't
wrong.
know. I don't know. I
Okay.
think that those people, who, I mean, I think it's always been very clear cut with me,
All right.
because of the way I looked in Culture Lab, even when I wasn't being political or pro-gay, people looked at me and they decided very quickly whether they liked me or not.
Right.
I don't like him,
Do you,
and so I don't think I don't think I'm going to convert people.
right.
You know.
Do you think the law? You obviously believe the law should be changed in England as it has been. In
Yeah,
Ireland.
I was at the Stonewall rally. I totally believe it should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it any different?
Right.
It's okay for a boy to drink, drink alcohol and get in a car and kill someone at 16. Why can't he make love with another man?
If there was somebody reading this who was about one moment away from believing totally what you've just said about coming out of the closet will take the loneliness away, make it easier to live with myself, what could you say to them to push them that a little bit further?
I just believe that at the end of the day, the only person you have, you have to be. It's like your honesty.
Right.
That's the only thing you have a responsibility to. Your honesty.
Right.
Now, if I'm not saying that people should or have to come out of the closet.
Right.
I'm just saying that my experience of people who are in the closet is that they live on tenterhooks.
Sure. Yeah,
They're walking on eggs all the fucking time, and they're never really able to relax.
Right.
And that is not a life.
Sure, it's not.
There's a saying by Nietzsche where he says, like something. I don't know if you can find it. It's like to redeem those that lived in the past, and something. Thus I willed it. Basically, to accept the responsibility for your life. That alone is redemption.
Right.
And certainly, my understanding is that, when you're honest to yourself, you're the closest to God.
Okay. When you die, do you still want to come back as Matt Dillon's underwear?
I know.
Did you say that?
I did say that, yeah.
Great
I was being
lines.
flippant.
No, they're great lines. You know how to deal with them.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. And if you want to read the article that came out of that chat you just heard, check my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Also, if you'd like to be notified of shows that focus on hundreds more interviews like the one you just heard, why not subscribe to the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast? Either way, thank you for listening.